When you watch Monk for the first few episodes, you're hit with this intro. It has this playful, lighthearted song that, although seemingly out of place at first, really starts to fit both the show and the character of Monk. The visuals are just Monk's morning routine, which is similarly not something you would expect. The thing is, as you watch the intro, you start to observe these slight things, like how he has to boil water to sanitize his toothbrush, how he has a bunch of the same suits in his closet, with the only exception being his old police uniform, and how he has to come back and fix the position of his umbrella even after he's already left his house. It's kind of funny, and although none of this has to do with the detective work, the playful eccentricity of this intro hints that the murders aren't really what matter here. What the show truly wants to focus on is this eccentric but everyday guy living his life and facing his own obstacles. He's not a bad guy, nor a broken guy, he's just a bit different. It's a very personal intro that is unfortunately only seen for one season, but delivers the exact message it needs to in the short time that it appears. And the way I feel about that intro is the exact way I feel about the rest of the show. It's not what I expected, but it was a fantastic and oddly likable journey from start to finish. Monk is a detective show about Adrian Monk, a former police officer and current police consultant who suffers from OCD and has a whole lot of phobias. In some ways, the whole detective portion of the show is the most important part of it, and in some ways, it doesn't mean much at all. Looking at all the marketing, you can tell that the main draw of the show was the fact that Monk is indeed a detective, albeit an odd one. The whole show revolves around solving murders. Without that, there would be no reason for these characters to ever put up with or even learn about each other. In fact, the entire reason Monk has reverted to the state he's in is because of the murder of his wife. Solving these cases gives Monk purpose, both within and outside the context of the show, and it keeps the audience on the edge of their seats. It also allows for all these different situations to pop up that force Monk or someone else into confronting something they're not comfortable with. And finally, the cases allow for guest stars to appear. A lot of the time, the stars tend to be the killers, and it's either directly shown or glaringly obvious, but the show focuses more on the how instead of the who, kind of like Columbo. Sometimes that's not true though, and we get some wholesome moments with people like John Turturro, Danny Trejo, Streamer of the Year Snoop Dogg, and it's really cool to see. However, as much as the detective stuff is vital to the initial draw of the series, the characterization growth and lighthearted nature of the show is what kept me watching. I loved watching Adrian Monk and the supporting cast interact with each other. I loved the way each murder was uncovered. I loved it when something happened to flip a character on their head. Every moment of the show was enjoyable because of this incredible initial cast of characters and their personalities, even if I was watching a weaker episode. Monk is this different guy with a knack for solving murders, but a list of phobias and character traits that either hold him back or cause him to take a different approach to life. He has a tragic backstory with his wife having been killed in a car bombing, but he still continues to do what he does and has the help of a few people around him. He isn't perfect either. Monk has his fair share of times when he's in the wrong and shouldn't be excused for his actions, like in Mr. Monk on Wheels, where Monk pushes Natalie to her limits by making her feel guilty. But that's what makes him such a complicated and good character. The rest of the cast is fantastic and are played incredibly well by their respective actors. Ted Levine as Captain Stottlemyre is a great tough love and voice of reason character. Jason Gray Stanford as Lieutenant Disher is a dim-witted but earnest cop. Biddy Schramm and Traylor Howard as Sharona and Natalie respectively do a fantastic job at being both a supportive and opposing force to Monk, and every character goes through their own arcs and changes as the show goes on. There's a lot of depth to these people, and that's what makes them so fun to watch. They all just mesh together and create this great dynamic, whether the scene is meant to be funny or serious. I find that throughout my viewing of Monk, I've had many things I've wanted to say, yet as I sit here and type this script, and I guess read it, I don't really feel the need to say anything else. Yeah, I could talk about my favorite episodes, like Mr. Monk and the Red-Headed Stranger, or Mr. Monk Goes to Jail, or maybe how I knew from the beginning that Karen was no good for the captain, she didn't deserve him. But I guess I don't have too much to delve into at the end of the day. The final season wrapped up everything the audience wanted to know very nicely, and while I'm not the biggest fan of the final case, since it was a bit disappointing in its scope, everything worked out in the end. It's not an ideal ending for each and every character, but it's one about acceptance and moving forward. You know, these crime drama detective shows are in this weird niche for me that feels almost like junk food. I just consume this media as much as I can, whenever I can, regardless of the quality. It's like a good blend of just enough drama so I'm invested, but just enough scientific or detective action so I can feel like I came out the other end just a bit smarter. Monk is more focused on the detective side of stuff and is less dramatic than, say, Bones, which, although it has its funny moments, focuses more on its drama and narrative. Still, it not only fills the exact same void for me, but even strikes distinctly sometimes. The stakes are there, the characters are flawed and likable, and it just makes you smile and laugh sometimes. Monk isn't just really good, it keeps you watching and wanting to learn more. You sympathize, but you also hate. You laugh, but you're also left downcast. And I think best of all, it just makes you smile. And that's good. I suppose since I talked about the first intro, I should give my thoughts on the seasons 2 through 8 intros. While I prefer the first song, I grew to appreciate It's a Jungle Out There, due to its portrayal of Monk from outside his house, the place he seems to be the most comfortable with while living his lifestyle. In the house, not outside. The song is still playful, but it brings a more ominous tone along with it in both the lyrics and music, maybe even to an exaggerated extent. It's perfect for portraying Monk's fears and how badly they affect him, while still having this comedic element to it. Plus, it's Randy Newman. You can't out-Acumen the Newman. The footage matches this, with most of it just being clips from the series of Monk in various uncomfortable situations. Again, it's just a bit exaggerated, but it makes perfect sense for the guy with over 300 canonical phobias. Like I said before, I prefer the very first intro, and it seems a lot of people agreed with me at one point, because they make a joke out of this in Mr. Monk and the TV Star. But the second one grows on you. As a tribute to the series, I shall end this video by listing all of Monk's known phobias according to the Monk Wiki. Fear of needles. Fear of dentists. Fear of death. Fear of lightning. Fear of mushrooms. Fear of crowds. Fear of elevators. Fear of aardvarks. Fear of airplanes. Fear of animal exhaust. Fear of ants. Fear of babies. Fear of balls of yarn. Fear of bed cover. Fear of bees. Fear of bees in blenders. Fear of being shot. Fear of birds. Fear of bird droppings. Fear of births. Fear of blankets. Fear of blenders. Fear of boats. Fear of bridges. Fear of bullies. Fear of buses. Fear of cannibals. Fear of cats. Fear of caves. Fear of chalk. Fear of change. Fear of charcoal. Fear of chia pets. Fear of clouds. Fear of clowns. Fear of cocoons. Fear of coloring books. Fear of coughing. Fear of crooked paintings. Fear of curly hair. Fear of darkness. Fear of decaffeinated coffee. Fear of deserts. Fear of diapers. Fear of dirt. Fear of dirty hands. Fear of disappointing his father. Fear of disorder. Fear of dogs. Fear of driving. Fear of dryer lint. Fear of dust. Fear of dust bunnies. Fear of egg whites. Fear of enclosed spaces. Fear of excrements. Fear of fallopian tube. Fear of fear itself. Fear of feet. Fear of fire. Fear of foreign countries. Fear of French films. Fear of frogs. Fear of germs. Fear of gingivitis. Fear of giraffes. Fear of glaciers. Fear of granola. Fear of heights. Fear of hailstones. Fear of harmonicas. Fear of helicopters. Fear of hornets. fear of hospitals, fear of immersion therapy, fear of imperfection, fear of infections, fear of insects, fear of jungles, fear of khaki, fear of kissing, fear of kiwi fruit, fear of ladders, fear of ladybugs, fear of lasers, fear of lepers, fear of leprosy, fear of lions, fear of lint, fear of lists that end on 221 or 223, fear of loincloths, fear of made in China labels on things, fear of meerkats, fear of mice, fear of monkeys, fear of milk, fear of mixed nuts, fear of mixed vegetables, fear of nature, fear of Neil Diamond, fear of new places, fear of nudity, fear of phone booths, fear of pills, fear of polyester, fear of possums, fear of public speaking, fear of puppets, fear of questions, fear of quicksand, fear of rabbits, fear of radiation, fear of rats, fear of risks, fear of rivers, fear of rodeos, fear of round objects, fear of salted peanuts, fear of scorpions, fear of sidewalk cracks, fear of sleeveless TV shirts, fear of snakes, fear of spears, fear of spiders, fear of spitting, fear of splinters, fear of slime, fear of soccer riots, fear of tampons, fear of Tarzan, fear of taxis, fear of thatched roofs, fear of the Beatles, fear of tigers, fear of touch, fear of touching foods, fear of trains, fear of travel, fear of trees, fear of trucks, fear of tsunamis, fear of tumbleweeds, fear of tunnels, fear of underwater, fear of underwear, fear of uneven surfaces, fear of untucked shirts, fear of vomiting, fear of wind, fear of X-ray machines, fear of zebras, and fear of zoos.